the thing with disassociation is that we might be numbing ourselves to painful experiences, but we're also numbing ourselves from joyful experiences. So allowing myself to sit with more of the pain and facing difficult parts of my body has opened up that much more pleasure and joy. Welcome to the Infinite Earth Body Podcast, where we talk about bodies, healing, pleasure, and share stories of embodiment on Earth. I'm your host, Maya. I'd like to start by taking a few moments to ground, root into our connection to the Earth, call in the support of our most benevolent ancestors and guides, and set the intention for this shared space of connection to be dedicated to the liberation of all beings. Okay, this is our first episode of the Infinite Earth Body Podcast. And I'm so excited about all of the amazing, brilliant, beautiful guests that'll be joining us in the coming weeks of the show. And today, for our first episode, I wanted to introduce myself and share why I started this podcast. I invited my friend Selma to interview me, and I'm excited for everyone to get to know Selma in a future episode when I'll be welcoming her back to the show to interview her. But for now, I'll pass it over to you, Selma.
Thanks, Maya. I'm so happy to be here. Maya Tokunaga Jensen is a holistic sexual reproductive health educator, an embodiment guide, and a musician. Maya's favorite things in life are playing music, singing, dancing, being immersed in nature, being off-grid deep in a forest, climbing mountains, exploring canyons, swimming in rivers and waterfalls, soaking in natural hot springs. Me too. Being in the ocean when the water isn't too cold and the waves are gentle, and eating delicious, nourishing food with people she loves. Maya started this podcast because they're obsessed with learning and talking about bodies. I can attest to this. Maya loves hearing stories about people's experiences in their own body. Each of us has a unique body that gives us our own perspectives and ways of moving through life. We can all learn and expand from hearing about bodies different from our own. It can feel supportive to hear stories that resonate with some of our own body experiences. Maya is endlessly fascinated with sharing experiences of healing and pleasure and is on a never-ending journey of becoming more embodied, expanding their understanding of how our mind, spirit, and consciousness inhabit our bodies, and being in deeper connection with our bigger collective earth body that we all inhabit. Wow. Honestly, if I wasn't already your friend, I'd be like, I need to know this person. Can we eat nourishing food and become obsessed about talking about bodies together? Um, I feel like this is an overdue thing. We've tried many times to sit and have this interview in person, and glad it's finally happening over Zoom. And while it's our first episode, there have been many more interviews recorded before this. As we know, this healing journeys are nonlinear and cyclical, so we'll be going back in time after this. But yeah, I just really want to start by saying thank you, Maya, for welcoming me into this process, as well as just teaching me so much about bodies. Um, I'm so grateful for our connection and just having a place to go to talk about the wild things that happen, especially, as womb holders, that we can share and deepen. Um, and really, I've expanded my consciousness so much about my body and also just releasing so much shame in speaking with you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Selma. I Love that you're interviewing me for the first episode because we're always having these kind of conversations anyway, and we love
I
talking about our
know.
bodies together. So yeah, I'm excited and thank you.
Yeah, of course. How are you feeling in your body today? Like, what's going on?
I feel good. I feel really well rested and I'm on day 13 of my cycle. So I'm in
Okay.
my favorite season of my cycle where my estrogen is going up and I
Yes.
feel really good energy and inspired. Um, yeah, and I'm especially just grateful to be feeling good and having good energy because as you know, I was super sick last month in December and
Right.
well now it's February, but yeah, and
Yeah.
it took me
Oh my
weeks to recover and I was like super low energy and I was just trying to be patient with my body. So now that I'm back to like building my strength and endurance, I'm just extra grateful for my health. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
yeah, that's good to hear. Your voice sounds so much better than December. The voice notes you were leaving where it was just 30 seconds of talking was tiring you. So it's just amazing to have that ability to heal yourself, you know?
Mhm.
And then just witnessing how resilient our bodies can be.
Mhm.
And it's also like you knowing that it's day 13 of your, I'm like, what day is that? Wait, I'm about to bleed. Does that mean I'm day 26?
Just
I
about,
never,
yeah. Yeah,
okay,
probably. Yeah, day one is the first day of your blood flow. So that's like
okay,
where the cycle begins. And
yeah,
so at day 13, I'm like right about to ovulate in the next day or two,
right,
probably. So this is like
yeah,
the most high energy, juicy, fun time of the cycle.
right. With the when it starts to get nice and wet.
Yep.
When you're ovulating, are there things that you most desire for your like how like what things do you do, eat? Like, are there any rituals for your ovulation time you want to share with us?
I mean, I think I just use like my creative energy the most. So that's when I'm going to be most creatively productive, where I'm just like fueling all my energy into, creating things because it's this like creation energy coming through. And yeah, I mean, it's usually like the most sexual time where those juices are flowing and just feeling the high energy and the inspiration. So yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
I think that's like the way you're describing the like creative sexual energy and how to harness it in the time when your body is in this moment of it offers another level to the biology and yeah, expands beyond, people are more than their biology, of course, but there is just a relationship with knowing what's happening and then having a multi-dimensional approach to that egg drop being like a creative time
Mhm.
um and productive time. Like I need to mark that on my calendar. I feel like I learned from you how to tell the difference in what was happening just with the hormones. And I, we each have unique experiences of being in a body, and hormone shifts can happen so differently for other people. Are there like any things you want to share about your hormonal shifts? Like this is a creative time for you when you're ovulating. Is what happens when you're about to bleed, or what happens in other hormone? I mean, for me, I'm noticing in the approach to perimenopause, those, just in that nature of hormone shifts, like what are your experiences of dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, like so much of my work revolves around this, that I have tons of resources around like moving through the cycle seasons, but
Mm.
just to give an overview. So I like to think of the menstrual, like the blood flow days, as like a energetic
Mhm.
winter when things are kind of more dormant and low energy and you kind of go into the darkness. And then as you move into the like pre-ovulatory fertile days, then like the estrogen's rising. And then, yeah, like I described, my energy gets better and I feel more creative, inspiration, and more sexual. And then right after ovulation, estrogen drops really dramatically. So then I feel like a pretty immediate shift in my energy in my body. And then progesterone starts to
Mm.
rise. And then it's progesterone is more of like a cozy internal hormone feeling. And so it's kind of like
Yeah.
moving into fall season, and then like about a week or so before the period comes again, both estrogen and progesterone drop dramatically. So that's when people really might feel like more PMS type feelings of lower
Mhm.
energy and more sensitive and like
So
um
it's the drop of the hormones that make everything feel teary?
yeah, I think
Oh,
so.
okay.
It's kind of just like I think of like in autumn when the leaves are falling from the trees if you live in a place where that happens in your climate, and it's so dramatic. It's just like the trees turn these bright colors, and then it's just like you're reminded of like death and decay and the coming winter around the corner, and that it could be
Yes.
really like sentimental. And so yeah, that really dramatic drop in the hormones, I like to think of like the trees dropping their leaves, preparing for winter. So that's yeah, and even right after ovulation, when estrogen drops, I feel like a little more sensitive right afterwards. So,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
going through this emotional roller coaster. And yeah, like I talked to you about, we're trying to have this segment of the podcast, Menstrual Magic Mondays, where we really go in deeper with talking about this stuff. But it's also nice to just bring the conversation in here because
Yeah.
also a big part of my experience of having a body as a cycling person. So.
Yeah, that's honestly, the level of sharing these types of things that I now am able to do in my life is so, I feel like it's just taken so many cycling people to talk about it openly for decades for us to get to this point of really sharing and having others listen intently instead of cringe or try and, try and shut it down. Like growing up, I wasn't even allowed to talk about it in front of my father or my brothers, It was like, oh, nobody wants to hear about that. Um, so yeah, I can't even, I mean, it's such a life bringing, it is the reason we live, and it is yet so taboo. And
Exactly.
thank you for, yeah, being part of breaking that stigma in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for others who are able to subscribe to Menstrual Mondays soon coming.
Yeah. I mean, I've
Um,
really been a little conflicted about how I talk about this or trying to keep it compartmentalized because I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it or don't want to hear about it or are even triggered by it. So I've tried to be like, oh, let me like try to protect people who might want to hear about other stuff, but not about this. But now I'm just at the point of being like, this is my body experience. And if people are triggered by hearing about this, like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna not talk
yeah,
about my body because it's hard for some people. Obviously in certain spaces, I want to be clear about we're not going to talk about any kind of like sexual reproductive stuff and just talk about bodies neutral or like gender and sex neutrally. And so there are spaces like that. But yeah, I guess right away we just went
yeah, we
right in
did.
there.
Well, I mean, yes, I appreciate that there can be places where a more neutral body experience can be elevated or centered. And I think the decentering is something that we are undoing. So it might need a little bit more love and attention. But you've used the phrase body experience and embodiment. And I'm just wondering, is that the same thing to you? Or what does embodiment mean to you?
Yeah, I think embodiment, I think it's evolved. My understanding of what that word means to me has evolved over time. You know, I now I think of embodiment like as I'm coming more deeply into my body, there's
Mhm.
deeper awareness in all parts of my body. Like I can become more deeply embodied in my shoulders and open up mobility and sensation in literally every corner and inch of my body. I feel like I can open up deeper awareness and sensation. And so that's been really amazing to just see how that's this never-ending opening journey of feeling my body more. And also,
Mhm.
it's been a process of coming out of my head. I think as like growing up in a colonized reality, most of us have been conditioned to spend most of our time in our brain and have overactive brains. And that's where most of our energy is happening up here. And so, really practicing like shutting down the brain, quieting the mind, and coming into the body has been part of my embodiment journey and um, not, obviously the brain is super useful and we love that our brain is doing all these amazing things. But when it over dominates and it's just like constantly thinking, it really cuts off access to our body in a lot of ways. So coming into our body as nature, instead of thinking of like going out to be in nature, like our body is nature. And so coming more deeply into the nature of our body and integrating our brain consciousness, our overthinking mind with our body. Like I have an anatomy and physiology teacher, Tammy Sweet, who talks about heart consciousness and gut consciousness
Mm.
and how we can kind of
Mhm.
think with our heart and feel with our heart or our gut. And so it's not just like totally shutting off the brain, but integrating all these different consciousnesses and connecting to our gut
Mm.
intuition and really trying to be as much as possible in the heart consciousness. So that's
Mm.
also just like the integration of the body and the mind and integration of
Mhm.
all the parts of our body. So I could be embodied in just like one finger or I can be embodied in my
Mm.
whole body as a system. So it's just sort of this fascinating journey that of what embodiment can mean.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's an, a lovely definition in and you began speaking about in a colonized mind, and I immediately thought about just dissociation. And you also talked about how there are other minds, the gut mind and the heart mind. And um and yeah, it seemed pretty simple the way you described it, but I think for for me, I am following along, and I'm just what it makes me think of is how much you've studied and all of the different teachers that that you've had and all of the ways that you've been able to explore embodiment. So just yeah, how did you get here? What are the like impactful practices you've experienced that have brought you to this just easy way to talk about all the different things happening in the body?
Yeah, well, I think as someone with a super overactive mind, like my Libra stellium, like
Mm,
constantly thinking, intellectualizing everything, I've just been obsessed with studying everything that I can. And I think it's part of helping my mind quiet a little bit is like learning about the body, and then my
Mm,
mind can so my mind has been able to let go more and trust the body. And also
mhm.
understanding my body with my mind also really helps me um, become more embodied, because obviously our brain is part of our body too, so
Right.
and I think I used to think I was a very embodied person because I was pretty active. I was like doing long distance running, and I have been doing
Mm,
yoga classes, for a really long time, like really consistently, and taking a bunch of different dance classes. And so, I spent a lot of time doing physical things. And then
mm,
at a certain point, when I started learning more about trauma healing,
mm,
and was guided into deeper embodiment practices of just really bringing my awareness into deeper parts of my body, like in my chest and inside my gut, in my stomach. And I noticed that there were entire areas of my body where I was disassociated, and that it was actually hard to bring my awareness, like bringing my awareness deep into my chest. It was like these wells of like fear and shame and trauma were kind of like stored deep in my body. And so it was something I learned also through the trauma healing world was like titration, they call it, just like small doses of bringing awareness into my deeper parts of my body, because it can be like overwhelming to come into my body. And
mm,
disassociation is also part of the genius of our body, that when we
mhm.
disassociate because it's too much and we can't process or cope with what's happening, that's also part of the genius. And so just really learning to honor that disassociation is also a gift of our body, and then coming
Mhm.
slowly back into these deeper parts of my body. And um, yeah, so that's been really fascinating to be like, wow, actually, I wasn't as much in my body as I thought. Like there's entire
So
numb
yeah,
parts. Uh-huh.
you're saying that an active body with a deep physical practice can still be unknown to there are parts unknown to even moving your body without consciously going inward. Um,
Hmm.
can you elaborate more on what that titration is? Like how does what are, easy simple things to begin doing that?
Yeah, I think one thing I learned is that for a lot of traumatized people, which I think probably most of us are,
Everyone?
yeah, pretty much everyone to varying degrees,
Yeah.
like whether it's your small or large traumas that have built up over life, or our parents' traumas, or our ancestors' traumas that we carry through epigenetics. So we're all,
Mm,
and living in a colonized world with, colonization and war for centuries, like, yeah, it's traumatizing to be a human at this time.
mhm,
To be on Earth at this time is traumatizing. So, but to varying degrees, we have disassociation. So I've learned that if it can be too overwhelming to come into the body, that further out parts like our hands and our feet, that's a really gentle place to start practicing embodiment, because I guess it's the deeper things are stored in deeper areas of our body. So just practicing like really feeling your hands, your fingers. You could try like touching your fingers and bringing your awareness. And
mm,
if you try to go deeper into deeper spaces and it feels overwhelming, then you can kind of refocus and bring your attention back to your hands, or your feet, or just feeling the surface that you're sitting on, feeling the ground under your feet, like feeling the
mhm.
clothes on your body. So just tuning into these sensations that are a little bit more external can be a good place to start. And yeah, I think thinking about our physical bodies and consciousness, I see it as sort of like we avoid these areas that are
Mm,
maybe harder to look at or something. Like in
mhm,
yoga, I could be doing all the yoga practices, but there's entire muscle groups that are kind of like offline, I realized in my body. And so I can do an entire yoga practice and continually avoid the areas that are the tightest or that are the numbest.
Mm,
And so I can go deeper
mm,
into areas that are already online and still just avoid other areas. So a couple years ago, I started working with a physical therapist and strength training person who
mm,
also was like an intuitive healer, it turned out. And she really helped me just work on really specific muscles and how to practice bringing them online. So, like, my quads were really over dominant and my hamstrings were kind of offline. So, through all my years of
mm,
running, I had like knee pain and had like different knee and hip issues. And so, she would just guide me into learning how to reactivate these muscles and come out of my patterns of chronic tension. And so at first I was like foam rolling my quads and just like crying about all the fear and trauma had been stored in my quads. And so they were chronically tight, probably from like fight or flight. It's like we have to run if we and we're not able to
mm,
run, then it's just like all this tension gets stored in the quads. And so it was just a really deep journey of accessing different muscles and retraining my body. And at first, it was almost like I had to relearn how to walk, and I felt like a toddler, just being like, why is walking hard now? Like these new muscles that I've never used are coming online, and so that was super fascinating. And yeah, certain training sessions, I would work with her, and then just feel like this deep well of grief, or
mm,
afterwards I would get off and just like almost like need to start sobbing and being like, what was
mm,
that? Or like I had a lot of fear of just trying to lift heavier weights for the first time. I was like,
mm,
would feel a tightness, and then this well of like fear and sadness would come.
mm,
So and so it was hard to be like, I have stuff to do, I have to be productive, but now I have to like sob
mhm,
because this stuff came up. And so yeah, I was grateful to really have the time and space um to really go deep with that
mm,
and get some support
mm.
around that.
Can you say a little more about what you mean when stuff comes up and how you are able to release? Like, is the tears enough? Is it storytelling? Like what's helpful in those moments when all of a sudden you're feeling something that's been stored in your body? Like
Hmm.
what are the what healing how does that healing happen for you?
Yeah, I think just holding space for myself is huge because it's if we have patterns of like disassociation or avoidance, which probably all of us have had, our different coping strategies.
Right.
It can be easy to just kind of being like, how am I going to distract myself? How am I going to run away from this feeling because it's super uncomfortable and I don't want to face it? So just
Hmm.
also something I've learned about in like trauma healing worlds is that we can be the one offering support to ourselves and being the one
Hmm.
receiving support, and almost you can kind of like switch back and forth. So even just talking to myself as if I'm mothering my inner child and just be like, oh, it's okay. I know I see you, I feel you, I'm holding space for you, and I'm so sorry for everything you've had to go through. That, just kind of being able to offer ourselves that compassion. And
Hmm.
if you could work with the therapist, that could be helpful, or just healers or somebody else to hold space is also really powerful. To just have somebody witnessing you, and like you said,
Right.
storytelling, just sharing your story. I think sometimes we want to tell stories about ourselves over and over, and like each time some of the charge and might come out of it and some healing might happen. So definitely storytelling, and if you can have somebody hold space for you, or if not, just holding space for yourself, and yeah, journaling or just allowing space for those feelings to kind of flow through and, you know, be released and composted.
Mm, wow, yeah, that is helpful to be reminded. Honestly, it's the holding space for yourself and being in that moment compassionate and not avoiding, but in acknowledging. I also heard you say that it's both a genius of the body to dissociate. And so really just forgiving ourselves is what I thought of is like, oh, okay, I'm protecting myself when I did this. And it I it's for me, it takes a little bit of the blame out of it. Like I've been avoiding and I've been dissociating and I shoulding myself. So just hearing you say like that is a genius that your body did to protect yourself, just like, the the natural way you would store that fear in your quads from the fight or flight. It's just these are responses that are innate and the only way to heal is really to be in the body and listen listen to what's actually happening. Um, do you have any other stories you want to share about ways you've healed yourself and or your personal embodiment journey?
Yeah, well, just continuing what you were just talking about, that Maulisa, who's also going to be coming on the podcast in a few episodes, she
Yay.
really helped me and taught me about those like the disassociation or the guarding or all these trauma
Mm,
responses that have been protecting us since we were little, that it
right.
can help to acknowledge them and thank them to before they can kind of let go, being like, I've been protecting you all these
Mm,
years, keeping you alive, keeping you
mm,
surviving, and then you're just gonna like judge me and shame me. And so that was a really
right.
helpful moment to just be like, right,
Mm,
thank you for protecting me. But now I don't need that protection right now, and I can like let down my guard a little bit and bring sensation. Now it's safe to bring sensation into different parts of my body. So that was definitely a big learning for me that Mao Lisa supported. And
that's beautiful. Yeah,
mhm.
I've also learned so much about my body from Mala Lisa and just understanding any somatic experiences that I've had. I feel like largely come from talking to you and her. So this um one thing that I remember being super scary is dancing in front of all y'all when we when we did our dance together and but also just having that witness of like the body moving and um yeah and just being part of your music video for your shoots like being seen in a way and fully inhabiting my body yeah has been really special for my journey and I know you've been a musician all your life like how has music been a part of your and dance been a part of your embodiment journey?
Yeah, well, I think every instrument I play and every style of music and style of dance that I explore, it's like exploring different aspects of my body or different expressions of my body that I can become embodied in this new way and like find whole new
Mhm.
expressions of my body that I hadn't experienced before. So I love just exploring so many different areas of music and dance, and it's like if one instrument, if I or one practice, if I go deeper and deeper into that, there that can be its own journey. And then trying completely new things is also, it's kind of like breadth versus depth of experiences that staying committed to one practice can really open up, yeah, whole new, deeper understandings of my body. And I think, yeah, like you're talking about just being seen and embodied in dance. And so, yeah, that's been a big process of just being able to share it with other people that I and not I've had a lot of like fear of judgment or judging myself
Mhm.
musically. And
Mhm.
so also part of settling my nervous system and healing my nervous system has been a part of really being able to be more embodied in music,
Yeah.
because a lot of times I had a lot of anxiety and fear. And
Mm.
so sometimes when I was performing, when I was learning to play jazz and improvise, I would have these moments of panic and
Mm.
actually disassociating while I'm on stage and there's people watching me. And it was like
Mm.
I was disconnected from my body and I was just stuck in a kind of self-judgment or fear pattern while I was playing. And so over time, as I've been reprogramming my nervous system, and I've been able to just stay present in my body and not have fear and just be able to enjoy myself more and be really present, because it's just, yeah, when you're present with other people sharing music and dance, it's just the most magical part of being human, I think, just that feeling of being embodied in yourself and embodied with other people and kind of like co-regulating together and experiencing these feelings of joy and whatever emotions are moving through. And yeah, part of the thing with disassociation is that we might be numbing ourselves to painful experiences, but we're also numbing ourselves from joyful experiences. So allowing myself to sit with more of the pain and facing difficult parts of my body has opened up that much more pleasure and joy, access to pleasure and joy. And so I feel like
Mm.
I'm always tapping into deeper pools of joy and pleasure that I'm like, wow, this is amazing that I can experience more pleasure than I ever have before. And it feels like I can keep opening up more capacity for pleasure.
I definitely want to get into more pleasure and ways that you pamper and nourish yourself. But just before, I don't want to, you said um, that you've been practicing uh, reprogramming your nervous system. I want you to talk a little bit more about that and what that means. And then you also talked about co-regulating as something that happens in the, when we play music or dance together. And can you also elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the reprogramming my nervous system, that was a really, I mean, that's been probably the core of my healing journey. And I really struggled a lot with chronic anxiety and depression since I was a teenager and through my 20s. And, they call it like mental health issues.
Mm.
But once I
Mm.
read the book, I think that was like 2016, I read the book The Body Keeps Score. And that
Mm.
was a
Mm.
huge wake up for me of being like, these mental health issues are actually in my body. And so that was a whole new understanding of and so it's I think of it in my body, it's kind of like these like loops that we're stuck in. Our nervous system is stuck in these loops, and it's like, yeah, reprogramming the nervous system to come into a state of they call it like the not if you're not in fight or flight, you're in rest and digest mode. And that's like the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. And that's also like when we're in heart consciousness, that's the state that we should be in most of the time. And instead of spending so much time in like fight or flight or freezing or fawning, these are all these things that we can get stuck in. And so just retraining the nervous system to really spend more time in heart consciousness and
Mm.
parasympathetic. And and that can also be hard for some people who are, it can feel really unsafe. So
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people who came into like a deep relaxation practice and then afterwards they were more triggered than they've ever been because it didn't feel safe. So that can also, be something that you want to take really slowly. That can be hard for people. But yeah, so just coming into those states of being in our body more consistently and trusting that it's safe to do that, and that's when
Mm-hmm.
all of our body systems are operating at their best. So another part of my embodiment journey has really been having chronic health issues and having autoimmune symptoms. And so that's
Mm,
been a huge part of my learning journey too, that through everything I've learned about autoimmunity and how to heal my body and like resolve these
mhm.
chronic health issues and come out of a state of chronic inflammation, it's been also connected to my nervous system. It's also connected to like what I
Right.
eat, the foods that are right and anti-inflammatory and nourishing for me, but it's completely inseparable from the nervous system and from my mental health issues. So
Mhm.
it's also was a process of healing my mental health issues and my gut issues and autoimmune symptoms and nervous system reprogramming. So that's all kind of like tied together and has been a big part of my journey in my body. And so yeah, when we spend more time in heart consciousness and in parasympathetic state, then all of our body systems, that's when we can digest, and that's when all of our body systems are operating
Mhm.
at their best. So
Right.
it's really also just like a long-term body support to spend more time in those states.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you and so many people are dealing with chronic health issues and mental health. And when you refer to our body, I'm thinking about our earth body and, this infinite earth concept, worldview, cosmology that you brought to us. And I mean, maybe this is an existential question, but healing it, our bodies in a time when we know the earth is also healing herself, how can we be connected to that process? How can we, you've talked about releasing and composting and reprogramming. Um, but yeah, can you bring it to kind of tie it together with how you see that it is also healing for this infinite earth?
Yeah, I think in I mean, healing happens within our bodies, and our bodies is a microcosm of the macrocosm. So we can heal individually, but we also have to heal collectively, and we can't heal in
Mhm.
isolation. And that some traditions and cultures believe that physical ailments and illnesses and actually happen first on the spiritual realm, on the energetic realm, and that it's a physical manifestation of a spiritual issue. So I think also addressing the spiritual healing and being working with our ancestors and being in community to do earth-based, earth honoring and ancestor honoring ritual has also been such a huge part of my healing. And I think without addressing the spiritual and the energetic and the interconnectedness of everything, yeah, I couldn't have healed my individual body if I hadn't tapped into healing on a more spiritual and collective level too. And yeah,
Yes.
oh,
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, no, finish.
Oh yeah, well, this was kind of connected to your other question about
Mhm.
co-regulating that
Mhm.
one of my biggest healing practices has been with nature and
Mhm.
co-regulating with nature. So if I'm in a forest
Mhm.
or in a mountain or with a river, it's like this energetic field that these nature beings create is so much bigger and more powerful than my body. So it's just being in a forest. I started noticing when I had chronic anxiety, the moment I would be like deep in a forest, far away from a city,
Mhm.
like my anxiety would instantly melt away. Or if I'm like in a
Mm.
river, I'm like, I don't feel any anxiety. It just like melted away the moment I'm here. So
Mm.
really connecting with nature and co-regulating our nervous systems with nature has been such a part of my healing journey too. And then also co-regulating with other people, like being in community and community ritual. We
Mhm.
can create energy fields that are so much more powerful than we could on our own when all of our
Mhm.
bodies and spirits are coming together and like creating this harmonizing together. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely powerful enough to heal yourself, but doesn't mean you have to heal alone.
Hmm.
And it's there are so many ways that you're not alone, like the spiritual realm, your ancestral realm, the earth body is present and there for you, is what I'm hearing. And also that, I mean, you're so many bacterias on you, like you're really never alone. Um, and even, yeah, just thinking about that as the community that I'm healing with, um, is something that I think I started thinking about with you, just being like, oh, this, I have a whole community of bacteria. They're like actually on me, my first ancestors, and I need to talk to them like that. Um, and then when I'm thinking about them like that, I'm like, oh my God, I just took a bunch of antibiotics and nuked my friends. Like that's intense, you know? Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
the ways that I've experienced you in your healing have been so inspiring. The research that you do, the the positive obsession that you have with just yeah compiling a bunch of information and then finding ways to share it in a holistic and prismatic way for all bodies is such a gift. And I want to congratulate you too for arriving to the sharing part of this. And yeah, how do you, I mean, do you feel proud of yourself in this moment? Like, have you celebrated this? What do you do to celebrate and love on your body? And especially in moments where you're, about to birth this thing,
yeah. Well, one really interesting thing I heard, one perspective about autoimmunity that I heard that really kind of resonated with me was I can't remember this person's name, but I heard this talk um, by someone saying that autoimmunity can be an imbalance of yin to yang energy. And so I was like, oh, have a way imbalance. I need to activate more yang energy, more masculinity in my body. And I have too much yin where I'm sort of always receptive and receiving and
Mm,
absorbing. And so I realized that part of my healing autoimmunity path was also needing to share more and have more output and less input. And so my balance of yin to yang um, needed to be adjusted. So that was really interesting hearing that. So yeah, I'm excited to share. I just my favorite thing is like having conversations with my brilliant friends about all this stuff. So when you're talking about the microbiome, like I love that you're one of my friends that I could go in really deep about the microbiome, and it makes me just question what is our body even when we actually have bacterial cells that might even like outnumber our human cells. Like we have
Oh,
our entire
yeah, but
body.
tenfold, yes.
Yeah, so there's just what
Yeah.
is our human body even? We're like this colony in this universe that's evolving, and there could be shifts in the microbiome and new bacteria coming in and repopulating. And so it's very trippy to think about like this universe blob, bacterial blob that is our body. Have contact with other bodies or with the dirt when our hands are in the dirt, or like, we're actually merging and trading bacteria and like, you know, populating each other with our colonies and our universe. So it's our body's a lot more fluid and like less firm than we really think it is.
It's so wild. Yeah, I could go on and on about it. I feel like the whole, um, like I it's not safe for a germaphobe in here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but
but
you are in a lot, do a lot of, I don't want to call them experiments, but you are, constantly like trying new things, eating different things, testing different things. Um, and sometimes these types of like explorations can be restrictive um and hard. Are like when you know so much about like what's in the water, what's in the food, what's going on, it's sometimes hard to indulge in things that are considered pleasurable in our society. So are there ways that you feel like you are held in this day and age to be, to eat decadent things or to like experience sensorially like a pleasurable, joyful bodily experience?
yeah, I think as I have come into my body more, there's things that I used to want to eat that would be pleasurable, but that might not be, that might cause like a cascade of inflammatory reactions and like trigger my autoimmune symptoms. And I used to feel
Mm-hmm.
like it was a real restriction, and I had a lot of grief around being like, why can't I just enjoy something with that everybody eats without having a whole flare up and like suffering afterwards? So but now
Right.
I'm at the point where I can feel my body. Like if I want to eat something, I'm like, yeah, actually that's not going to make my body feel good. And so I'm really more connected to eating pleasurable things that nourish my body, and just sometimes indulging in things that might not be the best for my autoimmune symptoms, but also just without judgment or shame, being like, it's okay to sometimes indulge in other things. And I've really found just like how much is okay without causing too much suffering in my body. And so,
Mm.
and even just the suffering and the symptoms, that's also just been this beautiful relationship with my body where I used to be like, oh, why is my body broken? And now I'm like, oh, my body's such a
Mm.
good communicator. Like when I am not good
Yeah.
at setting boundaries for myself, my body sets boundaries for me. And I'm like, thank you, body, for communicating so clearly. And now I
Yeah.
can now that I'm better at setting boundaries for myself, my body doesn't have to flare up as much and set boundaries for me that I wasn't respecting my boundaries. So, and there's so many
Wow.
ways to find pleasure, and just like I spend a lot of time in the desert in a very dry climate. So I love like making body butters and just moisturizing myself and keeping
Mm.
myself well
Mm-hmm.
hydrated and taking
Mm-hmm.
baths, and Yeah, there's just so many ways to like pamper and find pleasure in our bodies. So I'm just happy to be in this place where I'm in a really good relationship with my
Mm.
body as I've gotten older. I used to spend so much time like hating my body and shaming my body, and now I really, really love my body and I'm so grateful and to have this body and
What do you
yeah,
love most about your body?
I yeah, you mentioned at the beginning how resilient our
Mm.
bodies are. I'm so grateful that my body's so resilient. And even just
Mm.
getting really sick last month, like that was one of the worst sicknesses I've ever had in my life. For a couple weeks, it took me out. And even that was
Mm.
this embodiment journey of being like, wow, it hurts every time I swallow. I can feel my
Mm.
throat. Every time I cough, I can feel my lungs and my diaphragm. And
Mm.
like, it was even pain can be like this embodiment journey if we kind of turn to the pain and um with curiosity and observation and being like what is this
Mm.
sensation, and yeah, so it's
Mhm.
just my body's ability to heal, just recover from that sickness. I was so grateful
Mm.
to that my body could, yeah, work through that virus. And I'm still in the process of repairing my throat. Like you mentioned, I completely lost my voice, and now I've haven't been able to hit high notes in my upper register of singing. And so that's been really scary and humbling to be like, oh my God,
Mm.
what if I can never sing high notes again? But I've slowly been just really gently like warming up my voice and trying to, and so now my singing voice is getting better, and hopefully I'll be able to hit those high notes again. Um, but yeah, just my body's amazing resilience and capacity to heal and capacity for pleasure.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
I love that I asked you, what do you love most about your body? And you were like, feeling pain. It's such a Libra thing to be like, oh, this pain has brought me so much closer to
Yeah, well,
my
it's
body.
yeah,
I love
because
that.
it really is. Yeah, in the pain, I was like, this is, I feel horrible, but I was like, it
Yeah.
helped me reach like a space of gratitude for my body and being like, wow, I'm glad I have a body and I'm
Yeah.
glad I can work. Obviously, having chronic pain is like debilitating and horrible, but being able to
Yes,
move through it
definitely.
and come to the other side, I'm just like so grateful for my body. Yeah, to be able to.
That reframe is just so important for has been for my healing journey, just asking different questions when your body's giving you information, thanking your body for the information and being, you know, instead of being like, why is this happening to me? Really be having the understanding that I have, like, your body's giving you the tools to heal what's happening to you.
Mhm.
That and listening to those boundaries that your body's making for on your behalf, and having the excitement and the and really the rigor to move through a healing journey so that you can see the progress of healing, your vocal cords, and being in a space of gratitude and awe about what's happening. It really is the antidote to like the defeating feeling of dealing with every time something comes up in your body.
Yeah, but it's
Um,
also, I feel like because we all have such unique bodies and body experiences, it's also, I would never say that to somebody else to be like, it's like I can have my own relationship with my body and we all have our own
right,
unique relationship, but I feel like it could be like triggering or rude or annoying to tell somebody else like, oh, just embrace your pain because it's your body communicating to you, you know? So just want to name
right,
that to be like that that's it's up to everyone to have their own relationship with their body, what feels right for them and their own framing of how they're dealing with their body symptoms or body sensations. And so just wanted to name that because yeah, we all have unique bodies, and we can only really be certain about our own bodies and be the authority of our own bodies at the end of the day, because we don't know what it's like to be in another body, you know.
That is so true. And even when you're saying that, I'm thinking about there have been so many times when, yeah, I would have been less than thrilled to hear that message. And being on the other side of healing yourself is it's easy to um, it's easy to be comforted by that because you are on the other side. Um, thank you so much for the ways that I mean, my perspective has shifted even in this few minutes of hearing about um your journey. I I'm I was telling you earlier before we got on about just sometimes reaching a rock bottom moment, it can make you feel grateful about that, A, it's not as worse as you thought it was, or it could be worse, and B, for me at least, like having having those lows really helps to appreciate the highs. Um, and so yeah, as we, continue in this journey to tell people more about the infinite earth body, um, I cannot wait to hear some of these interviews. Are people just gonna like subscribe? Like, where do people find this? Is it online?
Yeah, so you can sign up for my email list at infiniteearthbody.com. There's an email sign up there, so that'll be the best way to just get all the new episode drops and all the other resources and offerings that are coming up. And things could get lost in social media, but um, yeah, at Infinite Earth Body on Instagram, on Facebook too. I'm not really on Facebook much, but things get cross-posted, and also we're starting a collective Patreon that'll be out by the time this episode drops that I'm really excited about. If you go to Patreon, it's Infinite Earth Body Collective. And so that's going to be a space where all of us who are collaborating on this podcast can share more resources. And so
Okay.
our listeners can support us there if they just want to support this project and also get some more free resources. Like a bunch of us are going to be offering different, guided meditations and different offerings. And also, it's interesting, even though I'm a sexual health educator, and when it comes to like my one-on-one conversations or classes I teach, I
Mhm.
have no filter, and like anything, there's nothing taboo and we could talk about everything. There's still, yeah, when this is like a completely public space, so there's things I'm not really comfortable sharing on here. Like when you're asking me about my own pleasure and body, like there's certain areas of my pleasure that I don't really want to share to the full
Yeah,
full public. So we're also going to have that
heard.
space for a little more like private internal conversations where we can talk about some more potentially like juicy or scandalous things that we might not want to share
Okay.
publicly. So
You're
um,
saving it for for
for
the
the
private. Got
Patreon,
it.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, if you all the listeners, if you all want to just be in community with us there, I think that'll be a really great space off of social media. And if you're, you know, emails can get lost in the inbox. So yeah, that's a great place to connect with us. And yeah, I think
Okay,
that's
great.
for
Okay, so content is gonna come in the email and Patreon for the juicy bits.
yep.
Okay, I'll definitely be in there.
Yeah, so we have plenty of things we could go on for days about in there too. That's not for public eyes, but for our inner circle sharing.
I love it. Love it. Just for the people in the know.
Mhm. All
Well,
right,
Maya, it's
Selma,
been
thank you so
lovely.
much. You're
Yeah,
such a good
of course.
interviewer. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
like,
still like a beginner interviewer, so I was like taking notes on your
I'm
smooth
trying. I was
transitions. You're
like,
doing
wait a
great.
minute. It's
Yeah. I'm so honored to be interviewed by you.
Oh, of
And
course, anytime.
yeah, I'm excited to have you back so we can ask you all these questions too.
I'm like, I want to be on the other side. I feel like a
Yeah.
little less pressure on me. No, it's been great. I feel so comfortable with you. And
Yeah, same.
yeah, I'm even letting you put my face on YouTube. So
I'm honored, and the internet is honored that you're gracing us with your presence.
YouTube I can do for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all need to figure out where we're gonna migrate our things to, because I'm just like, what is it? What's next? What's
Mhm.
next for our for yeah, like for the ways that we can be online in without impacting the earth in the ways that we have been, and without taking away from our real connections, and in like just a way that can be like healing versus what's happening now with people's like anxiety and mental health and like depression just like skyrocketing from using these things.
Mhm.
I definitely believe that because these materials are made of the earth, and because they are, like in a representation of our consciousness and connection and tech that we've had on this planet for years, that they can be in service to us to heal and to inform and to uplift and to empower. And I yearn for the early days of the internet. And
Mhm.
maybe in the future days of the internet when it's ours again.
Yeah, I really feel hopeful about that for sure. We're really at a turning point right now where people are getting fed up and
Right.
really
And there's new
desperately need
tech, like
alternatives. Yeah.
the deep seek. What is this? What is like the assumptions people have made about what's needed to like connect are, yeah, like you said, just in the turning point.
So I'm excited to just keep building
Same.
and growing our mycelial network with the assistance of these earth element technologies
Ashe.
and just, growing our connections and our movements and
Ashe.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. Do you want to close this
Yeah,
and seal this medicine?
yeah. So let's close this container and seal the medicine we just shared and give thanks to our most benevolent ancestors and guides for being here and supporting us.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or on YouTube, and feel free to leave any questions, other topics you'd like to hear about in a future episode, or anything else you'd like to share in the comments. Please leave a review for the podcast, and if you'd like to go deeper in the conversation in our inner circle, you can join our Infinite Earth Body Collective Patreon. You can see the link in the show notes, and thank you again for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.